All right, and we are live. I want to welcome everybody who's watching. We will be talking about minority mental health again today, but focusing on the Korean American community. And to talk about that, I have with me Naomi Choi and Leah Ulmer. Welcome, guys. How are you guys doing? Can you hear me okay, Leah? Leah, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm good. How are you?
Okay.
Yes.
I am so glad that you guys could join me today. So just to get us talking, could you guys kind of give me an overview of Korean American culture, like some of the highlights and traditions or anything like that that you might feel comfortable sharing? Naomi, do you want to go first?
Sure. So something about Korean American culture, I think that's unique is that a lot of times the values are really opposing. So, for example, in Korean culture, it's very collectivist, group mentality. The bamboo reed that is standing will be trampled on in order to stay with the rest of the group, versus American values that says you need to be an individual, you need to speak up, you need to have a mind of your own that's independent from the group in order to be seen as a valuable individual. So I feel like Korean Americans are very much a mixture of both. Which is, that value and the mindset of honoring one's family and honoring one's parents and really valuing community, while also having a growing voice and a growing individualized identity, I would say, is very much how I see Korean Americans. But again, this definitely varies person to person and generation to generation.
Absolutely. What about you, Leah? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with kind of everything that she has spoken to. I think that there's definitely, like you're going into like a homogenous culture and a society, even in terms of just like the generalities of being able to like go in a crowd and you blend in versus you being in America and just being yourself. It makes you stand out in America. And that's kind of like the whole melting pot concept. Not to say that it's actually really in effect, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So in talking about cultures, I really like talking about the different traditions and different foods and stuff like that. Do you guys have any special traditions or celebrations that you celebrate that you would like to share about? And I want to hear about the foods too.
I think I think celebration wise, I'm like trying to think of something that stands out, but I feel like my favorite food that my mom makes me, it's so simple, but it's called miyeokguk, which is like seaweed soup. Sounds gross, but it's not. Trust. It's very good. But that's typically given on birthdays, sometimes New Year's, or holidays, and then also when you're recovering from pregnancy, that's like the encouraged health soup. But here in LA, we have something called kogi truck, because taco trucks are super big here because there's a huge Hispanic population. So this combines Korean and Mexican food. So they have like kalbi tacos, kimchi quesadilla, which is bomb.
It actually sounds really good.
It's
like
amazing.
I want to try that.
Yeah, if you're ever in LA, I highly recommend stopping by Kogi Truck and finding them.
Nice. What about you, Leah?
I would say celebration-wise, my family, we're just not really part in that. We're just not really big on doing it. We like, yeah, I can't think of, we're pretty neutral in that space, but food wise, like my mom will cook it up. And I will say that like, all I really need is like kimchi and rice and I'll be totally happy. Like I want that like deep fermented goodness that like kind of bubbles down. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember trying some of the food that you made when we lived in Jacksonville a few years ago. So it was definitely awesome to try it. And I've actually tried a couple other dishes, and I think my favorite is, I don't know if I'm going to be saying this right, so correct me. Dolsot bibimbap? Is that how you say it? So that's kind of my favorite. Like it has the white rice at the bottom, and then like there's veggies on top of it, and it's just really good. So that's my favorite that I've tried. All right. So
that's a classic for sure. Yeah.
So since we're on the topic of food, how do you guys feel that Korean Americans react to food in terms of cultural issues or body image issues? I shared an article with both of you guys. I don't think you had the chance to read it, Leah, but it talked a little bit about the body image issue within the Korean American communities, and I'm just kind of curious to hear from you guys, like what your thoughts are on that, if it's something that you've noticed or if it is something that is talked about widely.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Korean people really emphasize looks. And that is something that's highly just can be really criticized even within people's families. I think thankfully I haven't super experienced that, but yeah, going on to that with food and especially women being criticized on how much they eat or how little they eat. Which a lot of times they'll say, oh, you're eating so little, and then you'll get criticized for not looking thin. But yeah, there was a whole scandal on the Miss Korea and how everybody also looked the same. But there's a lot of I would say a standardization of beauty in Korean culture, especially because of I would say the strong influence of pop culture in Korea.
Gotcha.
I think to echo off of that, like looking at how, for instance, just like Korean skincare has blown up globally, I think that's because there is such a focus in Korea about having this like immaculate skin routine. You know, like if you don't have like the dewy, beautiful skin that is blemish free at all times, like what are you even doing? You know what I mean? Like, what are you even, did you put on a mask? Did you do all these things that you're supposed to do? Because if you're not, then are you really, especially like you're saying, are you taking care of yourself as a woman? Because if you don't have like your skin or your beauty or like how you fit into clothes, like what else is there?
Wow, that's very interesting. Because I mean, I never realized before that there was such a focus on body image in terms of, you know, the beauty standards and body size and everything like that. So that's very interesting to hear.
Just to like one more comment about food and women, I would say that you're encouraged to have a hearty appetite, but you still have to be a size nothing. If you don't have the hearty appetite and don't fit into size nothing, like that's the discrepancy. Like you can't eat little and be skinny. You have to eat a lot and be skinny, and then you're healthy. Wow. Like I feel like you're judged on like, it's like I am eating a lot, but you're still having a comment about this. I don't know.
Big double standard for sure.
So how do you guys feel like that has impacted the self-esteem of women and girls within Korean American culture? And to kind of add to that question, is there a focus on the men as well for them to adhere to those beauty and body image standards?
I'm not 100% for men, but I will say that you see more men just in general, like men go to saunas, men go to like bathhouses. Like it's not weird to go and like take time to actually take care of yourself or like groom yourself even. Like that's like allotted time and space that is very gender neutral. Now, is there as much of an emphasis placed on men? Arguably not, but that's like down to an individual basis. And maybe I'm not hearing that and receiving that end on their end.
Yeah, I think I would say in Korea, it's definitely more like more seen and more emphasized about that beauty standard for women more than for men. There still is a standard in Korea for men because men in Korea wear makeup, whereas Korean American men do not. So it's definitely looser here in the States, I would say, but there's still the expectation for sure for women.
Wow. So what impact do you guys feel like that has on a young Korean American girl's self-esteem?
I mean, it's definitely, I think it's just almost like you don't even really contemplate self-esteem. Like, I don't think that that's like a conversation that like you have with yourself, or like that I even see my mom having with herself at her age. Like, it's not about self-esteem. It's just about getting your mind right and having great skin. Like it's no other pieces and components or like a discussion in this long kind of elaborate way about how do I feel about myself. It's just about the expectation you're supposed to meet. And either you can check the box or you can't. Like, I feel, you know what I mean? Like, not to say that it doesn't actually have repercussions that aren't being discussed, but I don't think that that is at all on like in an open kind of way.
So it's not really talked about.
I think a lot of times it breeds a lot of anxiety, low self-esteem, and probably some performance anxiety, just because like you have this message that's telling you need to look a certain way. You also need to not be visible. And if you are visible, that visibility needs to be interpreted as good and acceptable. And if it's not that, then you're bad. You're doing something wrong. You're a failure. So and a lot of that is measured against one's value as a human. So I think for a lot of young girls who are hearing from their parents, oh, you need to eat more. Oh, you've gained so much weight, and making little comments, or your skin is breaking out. It just makes them feel more visible in a bad way, like a negative way. And it all ties back to when you are visible, you are representing our family, so you have to appear a certain way. So there's a lot of layers, I think, of pressure that are being internalized by not just young women. I would say young men as well, but more so for young women, for sure.
So definitely lots of double messages and double standards and a lot of pressure. Yeah, that's very interesting. And that kind of leads me into my next question for you guys is, what value do you feel like is placed on mental health within the Korean American community?
Go ahead, Naomi.
Yeah, so I work as a therapist, and I do have Korean American clients because I work in LA, and there is a huge Korean American population here. And what I find is that people who are within our generation, and mostly I would say second generation individuals, so those who are born in the States, their parents were the first generation to move to the States, that they are having a more open mentality to mental health. But I find that it takes them a long time to get through the door. And so whenever I ask these people, what has finally got you to pursue mental health for yourself? Like, first of all, I'm so proud of you that you are taking that chance and taking that time to take care of yourself when other people are expecting you to just have it together. And I asked them, what took you so long to get there? Because if we go into their history, it took them for some people, it takes up years for them to get through the door. And part of it is shame. It's the shame that's intrinsic in Korean culture, that's passed down from family, that whatever's within the family, you keep it to the family, because we're talking about saving face in our family and appearing good to other people, so that we don't like rock the boat. We don't want to create negativity for other people, so we're going to keep it to ourselves and keep it to our family. So that's one message that keeps people from getting through the door. And then also, I feel like we're kind of battling through this. I think it was more extreme in the past, where people thought that mental health is only for crazy people. I don't see that as much, but that belief is still there. That it's mental health is only for those who are the most severe, and not for someone who's going through normal crises.
Right.
And if you're going through a normal crisis, you have to take care of it yourself. Otherwise, you're a failure. This looks back on your family. Those kind of things.
Wow, that just sounds like a lot of pressure to me. Like, I'm hearing you, and I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh, like, for somebody to have to deal with life stressors and changes and all these different things, and not feeling like they could seek help because of the shame and all of that. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Leah, I have a question specific to you. I know that you're biracial, Korean and Caucasian. So I'm kind of curious to hear your perspective in terms of kind of what it means for you to be a part of two cultures and trying to navigate, like the different values and everything like that. And you mentioned earlier about America being sort of this melting pot, but not really. So just kind of curious about your perspective.
So to start, I would say that I'm mixed race. I don't think I've ever called myself biracial in any kind of way. Just
weird for the correction.
Weird to hear it. I would say that, okay, the cliche is like when you're mixed, you don't fit in anywhere. And like we go on that pathway. But I think that like on the flip side of that is that I understood from a very early age that I just am. Like, like that's it. I am. And there is nothing else to it. And that I was able to see that, I don't fit in anywhere perfectly. But with that mentality, I could see that like, hey, from this culture or from this space, I like these ideas. So I'm going to adopt them. And I had no bias to see, like, if I saw in a movie, like a man was a lead. It wasn't to me that I saw him even as a man, because I've always had to cross lines anyways. So I could see myself in his role, because like, for me, like, I like those characteristics. I would say that like, yeah, there's I think on like the more negative end of it's whenever I meet someone, I have to predict what they think about who I am, and also their values and stigmas they have associated with whatever they think that I am. It doesn't matter what I am, and I can tell them what I am. And I love when people argue with me about it. I'm like, okay, well, it is what it is, And so like if someone, let's say like someone thinks that I am Latina, and like I am trying to express to them like I'm actually like half Korean, like half white. They're like, no, you're not. I'm like, okay. And let's say they don't like Latina people, like they're like that's like the brunt of the force that I get from them. Even though I'm like, I'm not even I'm not even like, I am, but you already hate me. And it's like, okay, cool. So I don't know. It's one of those, like I said, we're supposed to be a melting pot, but are we in reality? And I think like most mixed people can say, like, have that same conversation.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. And I really like what you said about you being you, like you're you, and you try to find the different pieces from the different cultures and the values that you like and that you want to hold on to. And someone is trying to start a conversation or an argument with you. Ben says, "No, you're not," and he's joking.
I know who he is.
Yeah, but I kind of hear where you're coming from in terms of people having, you know, those different preconceptions about you without even knowing who you are, and they're not even being open-minded to hearing your perspective and to even letting you correct them. So yeah, that's very interesting.
That offends me deeply. Hearing that.
Tell me more, Naomi.
It's that thing about assumptions, you know, and everyone runs on assumptions because that's how we put things into organization and into our understanding of what we think is right. And so someone saying to you, "No, you're not," it's like that shows their own offense. Like, wait, it's that catch-22 where like, wait, now I'm what I assumed is wrong. I feel the need to correct you. Which again, I'm getting so offended just talking about it. But yeah, it's I talk about this with my other multiracial. It depends, because for some people it's like multiple backgrounds, but that feeling of I belong to this culture, but I don't fully belong. I identify with this culture, but I'm not fully accepted, or I'm not fully a part of it. And again, it goes into, do I fit in, and do other people see me as belonging when I know I belong? And I know I'm making space for myself in this space. But when someone's, oh God, I'm sorry.
No, this is a good conversation.
There's definitely like, I mean, when I was younger, and I mean, even now, like, let's be honest, even now, like sometimes like when I walk into a space, it's almost like a question of, am I enough? Am I enough of what I'm supposed to be in this space, to talk and have the opinions that I do have? Am I going to be taken at face value, or am I going to be like dismissed because it's like, yeah, but you're not a full experience? That's like, wonderful. I'm so glad that my half experience does not qualify me to like have this voice and be in this space. So it's like,
yeah, it's definitely frustrating for sure. And as you guys can see from some of the comments, there's been some pretty similar experiences, you know, where people just assume something about you, and they're not willing to hear what you have to say about it. So thank you so much for being open to sharing about that, Leah, because I definitely enjoyed hearing your perspective on that. So moving on just a little bit, I kind of mentioned earlier about different stressors and things like that when Naomi was talking about the time that it takes Korean people to actually get into the door to seek mental health care and all of that. I'm curious to hear from you guys if you've noticed any patterns in terms of how Korean Americans kind of handle stressors overall, or even individually, like for you guys.
Oh, okay. For myself, I am a classic avoider. I am so good at it. Very, very good. I'm also classically horrible at taking care of myself, which is very representative of my people. We're very good at taking care of others and sometimes not ourselves. And but avoidance, ooh, let's talk about that. So I hear this a lot with other just Korean people and Korean Americans, is that experience of I'm experiencing something and it's not okay and I need to say something, but I am going to sweep it right under the rug because it's not acceptable for me to say anything. It's not acceptable for me to speak up. It's not acceptable for me to have negative emotions about something. So I'm going to sweep it under the rug and just put all of my energy into putting on a brave face and smile through it and be essentially the model minority. Like, yeah. So, all the feelings.
Yeah. I think, just kind of going off of that, it's like, it's very performative. It's not an honest conversation about mental health. It's about performing to like you said, the model minority myth. You just must be perfect. And if you have any kind of negative anything, that's not being perfect. So perfection is definitely, I think, at the core, and that even like negative emotions make you not perfect, instead of being able to see that like perfection is one, unattainable, and two, that like we are humans and we have a vast array of emotions that we're supposed to be able to freely express and like navigate through. No.
Wow. Yeah, definitely lots of feelings and emotions for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think also with that, the sweeping under the rug. So what happens is that you sweep it under the rug and you pretend, you like keep it in. There's this word in Korean called chama, which means like hold it in, persevere, which I hate that word so much. I had to get over the word because I was told that so much growing up, is just keep it in, hold it in. But with that is what happens is you see the anxiety, you see the pretending and the imposter syndrome, and you pretending that you're okay until you're a volcano of emotion and it's coming out. And there's actually a cultural specific diagnosis in Korea called rage disorder.
Interesting.
Which is it's like on just there's no lid. It's just this very visceral rage that comes out because of all that's been dampened over time. And you see this as an issue in Korea, as well as in America. Like in the privacy of homes, you see those arguments between parents, suicidality amongst youth, as well as older individuals, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know that there was like a Korean rage disorder. I was just going to say that the only expression of emotion that is like really big and like takes up space is anger. That's the only thing that like I will say, like when like your mom hits that point, or whoever, when they reach that like point, you're like, dear sweet baby Jesus, I apologize for everything that I've done and haven't done. I wish very much that I could just hop back and just it just doesn't stop either. It's like I didn't even know that was all happening, and you have contained a lot for a very long time. And I do the same thing now. And I've definitely rage quit jobs like that. It's like I've tried to keep it together and I can't.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot. I mean, I can imagine. Yeah. This is me trying to process this information that you're sharing with us right now. And I am so glad that you guys are open to sharing these experiences, because I think so many times people don't really realize what individuals within specific cultures endure. And again, going back to the assumptions and all these different preconceptions that people may have about different cultures, these conversations don't happen, and it's like, oh, I have an idea of what you are or who you are based on, you know, media and TVs and stuff like that, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm so glad that you guys are willing to share these things. Do you guys feel like within Korean American culture, and just for you two specifically, do you feel like understanding your family history of mental health is something that's important to you?
So I would say that for anybody, it's kind of like just important just to kind of have like a background of what's been happening. Like for me, my mom grew up in a group home, so we don't have like family history that way. So I almost, now that like I'm reaching an age where it's like I might have to take over as caretaker eventually, like in order to be prepared, it would be nice to have something. But I feel like we're kind of going into unknown territory, and I'm admittedly like kind of nervous, you know, like I've worked with geriatric patients. I know that like sometimes like things manifest in later years that you would never see any other time. So yeah, I wish I could be prepared.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on that.
Yeah, I think something from my studies that I've really appreciated is this term called intergenerational runoff. And basically what that is how different symptoms and mental health is passed down generation to generation. And this is something that's seen in like Jews, for example, Jews who went through the Holocaust. Those individuals internalize a bunch of things, but from their experience, but never told their children what they had gone through because it was so horrifying, so traumatic, and so shameful that they did not tell their children. But what you see is 2 generations down that the children's children are manifesting symptoms of anxiety, depression, trauma, like PTSD, even though they did not go through PTSD. So this is something that I identified with so deeply because like if you think of Korean culture, yes, we are like South Korea is so high tech, like we've the economy skyrocketed after basically America came in to South Korea. But if you think about it, like just in my grandmother's generation, we were taken over by Japan in Korea, and they took over, they did all sorts of horrific stuff and basically tried to erase our culture. They gave my grandma a Japanese name, they forced her to speak Japanese only, and try to erase our culture. But this is something she never spoke about as well to her children because it was such a shameful experience and it was such a horrifying experience. And this is something that is not talked about directly generation to generation, but something that I think now we're discovering in media. Like Korea is so good at making dramas that are so sad. So if you ever have a night that you just want to cry, watch a Korean movie. It will make you cry. But so there's conversations that are not being bridged between families that I found like that word intergenerational runoff like was like a light bulb in my head that made so much sense of why my family is so anxious, why they're so secretive about certain things, why they shame certain conversations, why they're saving face in a certain way to restore identity. And then media, I feel like, has been filling in the gaps of conversation that has been missing between families. Is I'm hearing what I want to hear from my parents through movies that I'm watching or through dramas that I'm watching, that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my dad, or oh my God, that's my grandma. Like that makes so much sense why she is the way she is now. But yeah, a little bit of a tangent, but related.
No, this was good. This was really good because I think the way that you phrase that and the way that you explain that really explain generational trauma, which is something, you know, that a lot of people in a lot of cultures struggle with that as well. I'm Haitian, and mental health is something within Haitian culture that's not talked about either. And there's a lot of these conversations that don't necessarily happen. So you definitely see some of the trauma from past generations manifesting in this generation now with anxiety and depression and all of that. And, you know, not being able to talk about your feelings because that's looked down upon and everything like that. So I really think that the way that you explained it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. What is one advice that you guys feel like you can give to Korean Americans who might be struggling with a mental health difficulty or just a mental health challenge? I mean, it could just be, you know, stressors at work, challenges communicating with family, things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a mental health diagnosis that they're struggling with.
I think if I was to give like a one-line snippet to especially like youth, I think I would tell them like, use your voice. Don't be afraid to like make a wave or a ripple. Like if you have something to say, like say it. Like I wish that like someone would have just like continuously like told me like, hey, if you have a problem, like let me know. Like just continuing to push me instead of like you said, no, just, you know, keep it to yourself. Like don't cause it. Don't stir up anything. I want people to just use their voice. Like, hey, I'm not cool with this. I don't like what you said. And I think that like in the workplace, I think that like racism against Asian Americans is like really glossed over. Like it's not supposed to even be offensive. And it's like, no, that is offensive. I'm telling you it's offensive. So please stop. Like I'd get that to you. It's not that big of a deal. Or like to say like all Asians are like really smart, like all these things. And I could like dissect it for you, but I don't have the time. But I wish that like all youth would just vocalize and express themselves like in any way about anything.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Absolutely. What about you, Naomi?
Yeah, I think the phrase that I hear, it's like this, I don't know if it's Buddhist or Confucianist, but it's this like Asian proverb of the reed that is standing will be stepped on. And basically the reed that stands up and vocalizes certain things will be stamped down to join the rest of the people, to not speak up. But I just want to say that if you are that reed that chose to stand up and chose to speak up, and you've gone through that experience of being trampled on, your experience is completely valid. And however much time it takes you to ask for help for yourself is okay. And also incredibly brave. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling like there's something wrong. And that you are deserving of whatever help you need.
Yeah, I really like what both of you guys said, for sure. I don't think that I have anything to add to that because I think that it's so important. I mean, what you were saying, Leah, in terms of the workplace and, you know, speaking up and stuff like that. I mean, that definitely resonated with me. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people because very often in the workplace, people feel like they don't have a voice. They can't speak up, especially with situations like if they're being harassed or if a boss or supervisor is trying to shame them and everything like that. People don't feel like they can say something, but it is so important to speak up. And just like you said, Naomi, all of these experiences are valid. Just because you feel like something's wrong doesn't mean that you're wrong. Like that's your experience, that's your feeling, and they're definitely valid. Do you guys have any other final thoughts that you would like to share before we end today's discussion? Okay, well, if you don't have anything else, I so appreciated talking to you guys. And Leah, you have given me something to argue with you about. No, you're not. Just like, what are you talking about?
The comments in the comment section about that is pretty golden.
Yeah, we had a lot of really good comments with people sharing their experiences in terms of, you know, people feeling like, oh, you're saying you're Haitian, or you're Haitian American, or you're Korean American, and people are like, no, you're not. So I'm going to be arguing with you about that, Leah.
Sounds cool. Sounds cool.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And thank you, everybody who tuned in and who participated in the discussion. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.